Welcome to the Comstock channel. My name is Brianne Hendrickson. Today I have Bruce Rastetter with us today. Welcome.
Hey, it's great to be with you today.
Thanks for being on. We go live this week, December 14th at 5 p.m. Central Time. Join David and Matthew Cruz as they talk all about the carbon pipeline. They will be taking questions during the live event, but you can also send in your questions beforehand to report@comstock.com. This event will be live on Facebook and YouTube. We hope that you join us. So let's kind of start with just telling us about your background and where you are today.
Yeah, my background is I grew up on a small farm here in the Alden, Iowa area, 300-acre farm. Always intended to be an attorney, went to the University of Iowa, started law school, decided I didn't want to do that, wanted to come back, be involved in ag. Parents didn't farm enough to have that make complete sense at farming. Farming was pretty tough in the early 80s in terms of the farm crisis and just coming out of that and the advent of high interest rates. So got a job in town and also started selling feed for Mormon Manufacturing part-time. It's owned by ADM today. That evolved into a hog management company, small hog production, and a younger brother who's an engineer brought him back to build our own hog confinement buildings and for customers, and then maintaining the feed business as Iowa changed and the need to have contract hogs to replace customers that had liquidity issues because of dropping land values. So those businesses were growing, and I would say a life-changing event for me was August of 1994. Met investment bankers from J.H. Whitney and Company in New York. They wanted to do the typical private equity, merge the companies I had started into a company called Heartland Pork. We did that in August of 94, and three other investment banks invested equity capital. I was CEO, and we grew to 1.2 million pigs a year in Indiana, Illinois, and bringing those pigs back to north central Iowa. And we're growing rather quickly when 1998 hit and 9-cent hogs, 50-year low in the hog market. I think those people on your podcast that can remember those days, for 65 days in a row, hogs went down. So it wasn't very much fun. And we had lost some packing capacity in the U.S. and increase in Canadian exports was doing that. And we survived through that, raised more capital, and ultimately in 2004 decided to sell the company, and we sold it to Christensen Farms. And they were integrated in the Triumph system. We were not, and that's challenging, I think, for a lot of producers, and you see it today, of not having that packer integration. The investment bank wanted to work with me and build an ethanol plant. And we did in Iowa Falls and built a company called Hawkeye Renewables. And the outcome of Heartland was not what any of us would have wanted it to be because of the way the markets reacted. So we were intent on going to market and gaining liquidity for Hawkeye when we did that. We ultimately sold the ethanol company to the folks at Thomas H. Lee in Boston, a large investment bank. I remained CEO. We built two more 120 million gallon plants to become the nation's third largest ethanol producer. And then as times go in ag and the multiple swings that we've all seen, 2008, the financial crisis hit. We ultimately then in 2011, we survived through that, but in 2011 sold the plants to Koch Industries, their Flint Hills division. That freed me up for the first time to do a variety of other things. In particular, wanted to travel to Brazil. And as I know Comstock is well aware of, and the opportunity that country has and for agriculture in the world. And so started traveling there. Ended up in Mato Grosso, double crop area, to build Brazil's first modern corn ethanol platform. I think one of the things that's been important to me and in my life is taking people with us that have honesty, integrity, and are best in class in their business. So we took ICM with us to Brazil to partner with them to build the ethanol plant. Today, we have 3 plants, a company called FS Bioenergia that is producing 550 million gallons of low carbon corn ethanol. And additionally, we've done some projects with Cisco, the Iowa Premium Plant in Tama, the only beef plant operating today that we brought out of the ground. It was a shuttered plant, had a history of failure. We're able to put that together and is the only cattle plant operating today, and we sold it to National Beef. Additionally, we're involved in a project of a vital wheat gluten plant in Kansas, taking a disadvantaged corn ethanol plant. U.S. imports 80% of its vital wheat gluten. There's an interest in bringing the supply chain back to the U.S. So that plant actually just started up last month. We're excited about it. But really, I think this all led to, and we continue to farm, and we continue to have hog buildings with some of the nation's leading integrators. And in addition to feed some cattle in partnership with another large producer. So we try to stay grounded on the production side, on row crop, understanding yields, varieties, the opportunity for the U.S. And we saw that through dry weather this year, producing massive corn crops with very little rainfall that only a decade ago we would not have done. But really, it was the experience in Brazil with low carbon fuel. We had to go through a process in Brazil to have the carbon sustainability score of our gallon of ethanol rated by the Brazilian government under a program called Renovo Bio. Out of 400 companies that have gone through that, we ended up with the lowest carbon score. At the same time, because of the interest in ag and investments that we make, I was concerned and have remained politically active of how can we help during the Trump administration on the waivers that were being given to refineries that were harming ethanol. How can we take away some of the politics of ethanol? And I wouldn't say we've done that with the carbon pipeline, but how can we make it market driven? And how can we respond to world markets that demand sustainability? So as we looked at California and CARB, we looked at the federal government in a bipartisan way had passed 45Q carbon tax credits, that if you sequester your carbon, you receive a tax credit. But more importantly, what we recognized, I think, that resulted in Summit Carbon Solution, the pipeline project. Today, we have 34 ethanol plants with us, 20 different companies, 21 actually. There will be more coming up, we believe, as part of that project. But how do you take and sequester their CO2, lower their carbon scores that allows them to access markets they couldn't today? And how do we ensure a future of growth in the ethanol industry, saving the combustion engine, and now having great opportunity at sustainable aviation fuel? And the only way you can do that is lowering carbon scores. So while the debate that we faced, as you know, is, from people that don't believe in climate change, or even the Sierra Club that's opposed to it, which is really crazy, or farmers that don't believe in tax credits. Well, instead of a carbon tax, this is a tax credit to create a market for 60% of Iowa's corn crop goes to ethanol. 50% of the country's corn crop goes to ethanol. And we recently hit a 4-year low in the corn market. So we better find new markets, we better find new opportunity, and we have to compete against the electric vehicle to garner consumer support. So that's why we're doing Summit Carbon Solution. It's an ambitious project. We look forward to getting permits in the next year, but certainly welcome any questions you'd have on that or anything else you want to talk about.
What made you say, ethanol and carbon are the place where I want to put my stamp on? I mean, you talked about, you did great things in the swine industry and things like that. Why carbon? Why the ethanol route?
Well, I think, frankly, agriculture's always been about how do we produce more with less? How do we get more efficient? How do we have new markets to have profitability on the farm, because we know that the investments that take place in agriculture every day are increasing yields. And we also know that we have a major competitor in the world called Brazil that is a major competitor for exports. And just before I answer your question, I would suggest to your audience that a few years ago, the U.S. gave up the number one export position in soybeans to Brazil, never to be captured by the United States again, and it won't be. And we gave up this spring, for the first time ever, Brazil exported more corn than we did. And I would suggest to your audience never to be given up again, their potential to raise more corn. So we need domestic consumption of everything we produce, and we need to export value-added products, whether it's in pork, beef, chicken, whether it be in ethanol. And the world's demanding lower carbon ethanol. It is. And sustainable aviation fuel can only happen with corn ethanol. Yeah, there's fats, oil, greases, but that price, the availability of those products is so limited. So corn ethanol is the answer. But the only way you can do that is by taking a score of 50 to 60 that many of these ethanol plants have in the Midwest, and in one single instance, lowering it 32 to 35 points. And that's what this project's about. So when we looked at clarity from the IRS on a bill that was passed under Obama, improved under Trump, and now improved under Biden, that would have tax credits for a limited period of time, 12 years, that would incentivize this project and others to work with agriculture to, instead of having CO2 released into the atmosphere, would have it captured at the plant at fermentation, not released, put in a pipeline. That's the safest mode of transportation, irrespective of what some people say. Never been a death, never been anyone admitted to the hospital from a CO2 accident. And transferred to North Dakota, where they've studied the geology for decades and can safely store it underground forever. And then someday, when uses become available, we'll have the capture of large quantities of that to add further value to it. But what you do is you take, today, if you say ethanol is worth $500 a ton to an ethanol plant, DDGs are worth $200 a ton, and CO2 is being worth zero to an ethanol plant, and to farmers, by the way, that depend upon that ethanol plant to buy their corn. So what we do today, ethanol is still worth 500, DDGs is worth 200, and now carbon's worth 200. And it amounts to a 35 cent a gallon advantage in our partnership with ethanol plants that they will get every year, which is equivalent of $1 a bushel more they could pay for corn and still break even during low oil prices. And if you think about that, how wonderful is that? And that is an even sustainable aviation fuel. The other number that it just amazes me, we have a 15 billion gallon ethanol industry that we fight incrementally. You see the debate. Oh my goodness, we got to have E15 year round, and we have politicians tripping and falling over themselves fighting for it. But sustainable aviation fuel is a 50 billion gallon ethanol market. And when you convert it, it's actually 88 billion gallons of ethanol could be used in sustainable aviation fuel. And you're not anytime soon going to fly a big jetliner with batteries. So the only way airlines can decarbonize is with ethanol. It really is. And with that, then, the plants have an unlimited opportunity to continue to grow, basically unlimited. It's limited by 50 billion gallons, but that's a big number. And farmers, as they produce more corn, will have to suffer less of the ups and downs that I mentioned. In my career, I've seen $1.50 corn, and I've seen $7.50 corn. I've seen farmland go from $4,000 an acre to $500 an acre and devastate farm families. And now we have record land values. Does anybody out there think that that can continue without new markets? So I think that's why we got involved in this project. We thought it was something terrifically good for agriculture. We thought it was something that was terrifically good for the Midwest, more importantly. Our plants touch today 50 million acres of upper Midwest farm ground. That number will soon grow. And that number affects all U.S. agriculture in terms of corn drives everything. As you know well at Comstock, if we're short corn, you're going to have more corn acres and soybeans are going to go up. Corn drives everything. Wheat, soybeans, and sorghum, sunflowers, and so we've got to recognize that. We need to have more markets, and we need to respond to world demand. Whether some of us like it or not, and I say that generally about carbon scores, it's really, and it's too bad it got phrased that way, it's really about attaining new markets. It's about if India or Japan want low carbon fuel, then how do we get it to them? How does America respond to that? And I think we can. And so everything we care about in terms of agriculture, that's why we're involved with it. It's too important not to succeed with this. And 75% of landowners across the system, you probably don't hear the Des Moines Register or other wonderful media outlets talk about 75%. Last I looked, that's a pretty big majority of Iowa landowners and others across the system have responded to signing voluntary easements. And we're not taking anyone's ground. We're paying very well for an easement to put a pipe 5 feet underground. When the other number, to give you some statistics, Iowa has 46,000 miles of pipeline. We're building 700. So, you hear some passion in my voice on it, and it is important. We are doing a very farmer-friendly easement, and love to talk about any aspects of that. But, it's too important to fail because we will produce more corn. And if we don't do this, we will have less ethanol consumption.
I appreciate you hopping on today. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Good to see you.